Hi, Neil.
Hello.
Hi. So one of the security measures we have to take is implementing the waiting room. And so that's why you were there.
Oh, okay.
But I'll begin letting people in.
Well, we got so many people. It's not going to take a while.
No, we have the option to admit everyone in at once, just like we did with the Adobe Connect. So it's just a quick button. But I just wanted to make sure we have the screen up and everything.
Okay. Yeah, Holly just emailed me the contract. So okay. Did she sign that too? The PDF has the, let's see. She said, I made updates. Can you each take a look and let me know if this looks like the original? I changed the contact person. So I'm assuming if it's all good, then we send it back to you and have you sign it. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. And then we'll send it up to this Superintendent Gordon, because he's the one who has to sign it from SCOE.
Okay. All right. So I'll look at that maybe this afternoon.
Okay. Sounds good. So if you're ready, I'll start letting everyone else in.
Oh, yeah. I'm ready.
Okay, good. And we won't start till 1, but just to let them in.
Yeah. I know we have a lot of stuff to cover, so we'll try to start promptly.
Okay, sounds good. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's CAEP office hour. This is Veronica Parker with CAEP TAP, and we also have Neil Kelly from the state CAEP office. Before we get started, we have about 10 minutes before we get started.
Hey, Neil, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we have.
So we'll be muting everybody, though.
We have about 10 minutes before we get started. So if a couple people could just let me know if you are able to hear my voice at this time. I want to make sure that everyone's able to hear me clearly.
Hear you fine.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So while we're waiting, if you have questions, you can put them in the chat box now before we get inundated. There's supposed to be, I don't know, 150 people on the call today.
Yes, definitely put your questions in the chat, and then I'll be going through the list just to mute everyone. And then also, if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, definitely let us know, and we will be able to provide support.
Veronica, will you be able to show the people that are logging on right now the agenda for today, just so they have an idea? Because I don't know if we told them who the special guests were today.
Okay, yes, we can. Here is today's agenda.
So if there's something on there that you see that you still need to hear about, let us know.
Thank you everyone for waiting patiently. We have about 6 minutes before we get started, but as Neil stated, if you do have any questions, especially after looking at the agenda, if you have any questions that you would like to pose right now, definitely feel free to type them into the chat.
Did I just get kicked out of the meeting?
Veronica, have you seen Jay Wright logged on? I'm trying to find him. I don't know if he's there yet.
No, he has not entered the room yet.
Okay, maybe I'll text him really quick.
And for those of you who may be wondering, we understand that there has been a lot of information that has been in the news regarding Zoom as a platform and some of the security issues that have been taking place. Our IT department did deploy a bunch of security measures for that we implemented to kind of negate some of those security issues. So thus far, as we know it, we are in a safe environment. And for those of you who are just joining us today, if you have any questions after reviewing the agenda or anything that you would like to pose at this time, definitely feel free to type your questions into the chat and we will be sure to address them. We'll get started promptly at 1 o'clock. We have about 6 more minutes before we get started.
So far, I guess everybody likes the agenda. If you do see anything that we're not covering today, please put it in the chat and we could try to address it or follow up for the next meeting. So Carrie asks, will this be a weekly meeting? We'll continue to have these weekly meetings until we don't need them. So that means we'll probably continue having them for a while. At least we'll make ourselves available. I can't guarantee all the special guests and expertise. Please mute your computer because we're getting a little feedback there. But we'll try to bring in special guests each week, give information. And then B says reporting positive attendance. If that's in a community college environment, we're trying to work through that on the non-credit side, trying to get some specific information on that. So we're working with ACE to get some questions on the non-credit side that we'll maybe post for non-credit colleges as frequently asked questions. So if you do have any specific non-credit questions, just email me and I can add those to the list. And then we'll work with the Chancellor's office to get those posted.
Okay, Neil, so the time is now 1 o'clock, so we can go ahead and get started. I just have a few housekeeping items that I'd like to go over with everyone. Since we are using Zoom as a new platform now, just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. Of course, you still have the chat that you can use, that you can communicate with us as hosts, or you can communicate amongst yourselves. You can also upload a file if you'd like by using the file feature that is located in the chat area. And this meeting is being recorded and will be available on the California Adult Education website later on this afternoon. So please be sure to access it if needed, and then also share with other colleagues who were unable to attend today's meeting. We are taking attendance, so if you happen to have logged in without using any form of your name or using your consortium name, please be sure to let us know who you are so that we can make sure we capture you in our attendance records. We want to make sure that we are reporting accurate numbers to the state as it relates to this particular meeting. And in addition, if you experience any technical difficulties, please be sure to let us know in the chat and we will assist you and fix whatever it is that's going on in a timely manner. Questions will be answered throughout today's meeting. They may not be answered as soon as you type them into the chat. However, please know that they will be addressed prior to us leaving this meeting, or if subsequent follow-up is needed, we'll be sure to take care of that as well. That's all that I have. I'll turn it over to you, Neil, who will get us started with today's meeting.
Okay, I just, for all those people coming in, I did say if there was something on the agenda that we're not covering today, please put it in the chat. And Darlene mentioned covering virtual meetings and Brown Act. Unfortunately, we can't cover those type of legal issues. So because each district interprets Brown Act a little differently, and the interpretation of the governor's and executive order. So you would have to go back to your district on that, unfortunately, because each district looks at Brown Act a little differently. But I would check with your local legal counsel. So sorry about that. But if anybody else has what their district has interpreted the virtual meetings in Brown Act, feel free to share in the chat during today's meeting. Okay, so welcome everyone. We're at 127 and rising. I think we had over 200 people registered today, which is a good sizable number. So I'm gonna quickly go through my items. Then we're gonna bring on Penny Pearson, talk about OTAN resources and distance learning in general. Then we have Jay Wright from CASAS to talk about reporting distance learning student data in TopsPro. And then towards the end, we have representatives, Christina and Alexis from Department of Social Services, CalFresh program. And they're gonna talk about if your students need, if they have food insecurities, if they need food for their families, what are the different options out there. and then we'll have a little bit of time for questions. So real quickly, just getting in there, this week we did send out the governor's initiative on health core, and that's important because we do have a lot of, I think, just looking at LVN programs and CNAs, we have, I don't know, 60 or 70 approved programs. That doesn't even include medical assisting and RN programs and pharmacy tech. So we do have a lot of healthcare related programs, and I would encourage your students to sign up for the governor's initiative if they do want to get a job during this healthcare crisis. And so there are certain qualifications. I'm not going to go into that today, but the governor's website does have some qualifiers on there. And so I'd encourage them to sign up. And so that was in the newsletter this week. We were also looking at credit for prior learning. There's an opportunity that we can work with community colleges and other credentialing or certificated programs to use, if someone's from another country, but they had an advanced degree, had a medical degree, medical certification. I know New Jersey passed a law allowing for outside certification in another country for people that were foreign born. We do have credit for prior learning policies in the community colleges. So we're looking at a way to try to utilize that to maybe take some of our adult students that are foreign born but have medical training, medical degrees, medical certification, because we are going to need personnel to handle the healthcare crisis and with the virus. So look more on that. We're exploring that. And then we sent out in the newsletter the healthcare equipment inventory. As you know, they're running out of equipment and supplies for the COVID crisis. So we did list about 80 adult schools and all the community colleges. And so I would suggest if you can pass that information along to maybe the CTE coordinator or the person that oversees your healthcare programs, and if they can complete that inventory list, if they do want to donate equipment during the crisis, that's what the inventory is all about. So there's more information on that in the newsletter, and there's a link to kind of an info page about the whole inventory effort. I also wanted to talk about the use of CAEP funds. So we did get some questions about, oh, my teachers want to, they're having my teachers stay home, can I still pay them? And so CAEP funds, they're still restricted funds. We haven't waived any of the requirements. And there's so much that adult school and community college staff can be doing during this time of crisis. They can, if you're not even offering distance learning, you can still offer services because CAEP funds can be used for services. And that includes anything from census information to food pantries, to referrals for unemployment insurance, to getting clothing, medical care, you name it. Sometimes the local adult education or non-credit program is a safe place for a lot of our students. So feel free to use these funds as case management, referrals, connecting people with services that can help them. We just want to make sure we're, working with our students. And if you are providing instructions, we're still limiting it to the 7 program areas, but allowing you to use those funds to launch any type of online learning that you need to put forward in those 7 program areas. And then finally, regular Zoom meetings we're setting up starting next month. We'll do regional Zoom meetings. I think we're dividing the state up into 6 areas. And this will give you a chance to share what you're doing, because maybe by next month, you'll have started back up and we'll get to see how many students are actually showing up in classrooms, what strategies are working, what strategies are not working, what online products students are responding to, those kind of things. So we'll be doing those regional Zoom meetings, and we'll have experts on the line, and we'll share a lot of information within the super regions. So I think the regions are like the northern part of the state, the Bay Area, the Central Valley, Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, and then I think Inland Empire and East Los Angeles. I think those might be the 6 areas. Central Valley would include Central Coast as well. So we'll be setting those up because meetings like this with right now 153 people, it's tough to share. And so we'll try to break it down into smaller regional groups, even though we could have a lot of people. It'll give us a chance to maybe share it, have a little more time and share what you're doing, and you can share among your regional colleagues. So with that, I'll pause before we bring Penny on to see if there's any questions. And I haven't been tracking, but let's see. I don't know, Veronica, are there any big questions in here? Not that I'm seeing.
I am looking now. There were a couple.
Okay.
There is one from John Warner. CDPH needs to get in gear. They are not implementing executive order N3920 to the degree that they could. They are denying immediate transition of allied health programs to distance learning formats. I am preparing a letter for key legislators on this specific topic. I guess it's more of a FYI.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of heard about that the Chancellor's office was also trying to meet with nursing programs, similar type thing, no immediate decisions and no waiving, but they're still working on it. So I think that's kind of a common issue that we're having, but I'm glad you brought that up, John. So we'll continue to work through that. So any advocacy we can do to help get our students, and I think the Health Corps initiative, it'll come to a head because you have the governor's Health Corps initiative trying to get students in, and here you have the certification and licensure. And so somehow they're going to have to get together and figure that out. So and John and CCAE and CAEP will keep us posted on that, and I'll try to track it as well. So thanks for bringing that up. Let's see, is there a deadline for the inventory ongoing? Well, given the crisis, if we could get that inventory completed as soon as possible, because they are expecting, from what you hear, there's going to be the cresting and of the wave, and they're going to be ramping up. So I think the sooner the better on that. But whatever you can do, they will accept. So we appreciate any follow-up in that area. All right. Was there anything else before we turn it over? Okay, so Eileen says, I just heard from a member in regards to COLA. She's stating now off the table. She's at the virtual CalPro meeting. So we won't know about the COLA until the May revise. There was a budget letter sent out to all state agencies that said the Department of Finance is looking at all COLAs and supplemental funding. So we shall see come mid-May what has happened to the COLA. But we still want you to submit your CFADs because those are time sensitive. And then we'll respond to the May revise once we know what direction they're going with that. So unless CalPro leadership meeting was talking directly with Department of Finance and Governor Newsom, I would still wait until the May revise. So thank you for that information. What are the 7 program areas for CAEP? So it's adult basic ed, adult secondary ed, ESL, EL civics, so that's 2. And then we have CTE, short-term vocational, that's 3, pre-apprenticeship 4, workforce prep or workforce reentry, that's 5, K-12 success, that's 6, and adults with disabilities, that's 7. And what are you hearing about the governor's May revise? I just covered that. So not yet, nothing yet, just be prepared. And then LAUSD, Laura was talking about all the great resources they have online. So take a look at that website. And how many are donating their old equipment to local nonprofits that does refurbishing involved in Connect to Compete? So if you can answer that in the chat. Okay. And how many other community colleges dealing with signatures for students applying to non-credit? I haven't heard about that, Thatcher. So we'll see if anybody else has any information on that. Janet says, I heard SWP and Perkins are getting extensions. Anything for us for 1819? Nope. You have until December 31st, 2020 to liquidate your 1819 funds. Did we get an update on WIOA 2 applications? I don't know if anybody, I haven't heard, but maybe somebody else can respond to John's question. And Beth's questions got cut off. Okay, and then attendance hours, we will have Jay cover that a little bit on WIOA. And then I'm not sure about CCC Apply, Thatcher. You'll have to look at the Chancellor's Office website. But if you could send that to me, and I will ask that question. But I don't have any information today. All right, and Diane says the LAUSD resources are on the Cal Adult Ed webpage. So that's good to know. And then Carla, Jay's gonna cover the CASAS appraisals. And Beth will be covering the proxy test scores and protocols. And anything WIOA, Jay will try to cover. I don't say he'll cover everything, but that's why we brought him on, is to help cover a lot of that stuff. So I think that's it. We'll turn it over to you, Veronica, and you can introduce our next guest speaker.
Thank you, Neil. Penny will come on to talk about OTAN's digital distance learning, resources.
Thank you, Veronica, and thank you, Neil. And if you can let me have screen rights, Veronica, I'll show our website and give everybody kind of an overview where things are. And welcome, everyone. And I'm just here to kind of give you an idea what OTAN has put together to help the field with distance learning resources, where you can find them, and how you might be able to get some additional assistance. So let me share my screen here real quick. I'll make sure I pick the right one. That's always fun in working with Zoom. And hopefully, if you can give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat pod that you can see everything, that would be great. I'm showing our OTAN website. And on our main page of the website, things I want to bring to your attention is, first and foremost, is our main top story. We're providing a listing of our online webinars that we're scheduling throughout this current week, and then we'll also do the same for next week. So these are available for you to attend. We have the links here on the page at the bottom. I'll just kind of, I don't want to link to it, but you can register for those sessions and attend them. We've had very good attendance. I think we had a record breaker this morning of over 300 people attending one of our Google Sites sessions. So if you yourself and you have your teachers that are interested in learning more about some of these online tools, I'd really encourage them to participate in these sessions. We also have a page here, a new button at the top is our COVID-19 field support page. And this is listing a consolidation of materials from several of the adult education leadership projects that are under the WIOA funding. But it doesn't mean you can't go and look and see what's here. We're providing a resource page that I'll open in just a moment, but I want to show you the rest of what's on this page. And then the training calendar, which again is where you can register not only for OTAN online webinars, webinars and resources, but from the other leadership projects as well as from CAEP, especially for the office hours, et cetera. I believe that's correct, Veronica. You have your office hours on the California Adult Ed training calendar, correct? I just realized that when I said it. I might not have been right.
You are correct.
Thank you. So we've also posted our webinars here as soon as we can, the recordings of those, as well as the resources provided by the presenters. So sometimes that's the PowerPoint presentation and including additional documents that were a part of that presentation. So even if you missed one of the webinars, we're trying as quickly as we can to get those turned around and available on this site. We also provide documentation and reference materials from our other leadership projects here. You'll see we have information from CalPro on their online course development resources, as well as AIR, the American Institute for Research, has a COVID-19 frequently asked questions page, which can be useful for teachers communicating with students or with even parents communicating to kids. There's also additional materials from CASAS, especially on distance learning, and we have the frequently asked questions here, and I don't want to take anything away from Jay, but that information is here as well, where you can follow up and get that update from these documents. The California Adult Education Office has also asked us to post their recent materials, including the memos and information out of the CDE office. There is a new survey available here, the Critical Events Survey, that Dr. Zachary has asked the field to fill out. And if you haven't done so yet, please do so. And if you filled out the previous one, this one's different. So she would appreciate if we could have the field go ahead and fill that out for us. It's going to inform her and hopefully the rest of the projects and the field of what's happening and how we can perhaps find some other assistance. We also have information for students. This is something that we had requested of helping students understand what was happening, and we've had some concerns with some of the scams that are happening, so we posted information from the Federal Trade Commission on what they're seeing. So this can be really good information for your teachers to pass along to the students to understand some of those things that they might be seeing. And then of course we have the other response information from the federal level for the World Health Organization, the Center for Disease Control, and then also other information posted from other partnering agencies. So we're really trying to combine all this into one place. So if you don't find it here, please reach out to us at support@otan.us, and we can pull that information for you or direct you to the right place. So I'm going to go to the back up to the top of the page and look at our resource guide to continuing for online teaching and learning. And we have a document here that's available to you to take a peek at. I believe if you have something you'd like to add, again, just contact us at support@otan.us. It is continually changing, as you can imagine, and we're trying to provide information based on topic area and links to that information. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you see a table of contents, so you can jump to what you're interested in. But also within the document itself, we give you the topic or the resource, if any notes are provided, and then what OTAN may have done that could help you to understand what that tool or topic is. And we encourage you to have your teachers take a look at this, especially if they're looking for technology tools that they can use to connect with their learners. So you'll see in working online, tips for distance learning, online course design and review. We have links to pieces of curriculum as well. And so all of this is just meant as a single place. It's not everything. I'm sure you can imagine if you just go out on Twitter and look for EdTech tools, you get kind of swamped. But we're really trying to pull things in that we know OTAN has additional resources to help teachers use those with their adult learners. So OTAN also provides online office hours, much like what CAEP is doing here. Well, we provide tech support to teachers about these tools or about any question that they have. And it's kind of drop in, give you a couple of minutes of one-on-one, and then you can go about your way. We don't record those sessions. They're just meant for teachers who might be trying to use one of these new tools and they go, I got stuck. So this is a tool to help you do that. So I'm going to see if I can grab the chat here and see what's going on. If I missed anything, if there's any questions, I'll head back to the OTAN webpage, and let me just double check if there's any questions here in the chat. So let me pause for just a second. And let's see.
Penny, what have you,
Yeah.
just one
Sorry.
question I'm seeing, because there's so many things in the chat. There was a question from Lindy down in Contra Costa County. What have you seen with jail programs regarding distance learning?
I have not heard anything from CDCR in particular. There may be others that have jail programs. I know that there has been discussions about, teachers providing packets, but as far as having distance learning capabilities using tablets or other internet connections, that's always been a problem. So I know there was considerations, but I don't know if any of them have been implemented. OTAN itself has been promoting a product called Rachel, which allows for curriculum to be basically installed on a local MiFi device that has 400 gigabytes of storage that can be taken into a jail. But, people just haven't had a chance to get on board with that. It takes a little time. And if anybody wants any more information on that type of thing, just hit support@otan.us, and it's a way that you can even go out remotely into your communities. I have one person who's using them to reach ranch workers on a CTE program for mechanics on tractors, and they put the curriculum on this device, and she runs out into the ranch lands. I've had others consider it for reaching their ESL learners that are working out in the field. That may be a little different now, of course, but there's the possibilities, but time and effort to take to complete those, of course, has to be considered as well. Any other questions? And please feel free to reach out to OTAN, support@otan.us. And it is a way for us to disseminate information to you and help your teachers and your learners to keep learning.
Penny, I did have a question. So last week when we surveyed about 100 people on the call, 95% said they were going to be offering some type of online instruction. Are those the kind of numbers you're seeing when you guys do webinars? Is there a real big enthusiastic response? And are the districts are you hearing that districts are supporting that initiative there?
Yes, I think that some of the original survey that Dr. Zachary posed before, initially there was just a lot of, we're talking about it. And now there's more, I think, of, yes, we're trying to do something, but there's a lot of discussion about how do they do that. They may not necessarily have all the equipment. Their learners may not have the equipment or the access. So, they're still in discussions, but I think the intent really is they want to keep their learners learning. It's just finding the right ways to do that. In office hours this morning, I had a teacher, very enthusiastic teacher, and she's connecting with her learners with good old-fashioned snail mail because her particular learners are not technologically savvy. They're relying on their adult kids to help them, but yet she's still trying to keep that communication going. And so there's lots of methods and ways to reach out, but it really requires the ground level field work of our teachers who know their learners to see, all right, how can I connect with them? And we're trying to help those teachers understand what are the different tools that might be useful. Some of the most simple ones may be a tool like Remind that is simple texting, because we've seen most of our learners have a smartphone, but may not have all the tools that they could use to help them implement some of those things to keep that learning going. So I do see there's lots of effort, Neil, of trying to provide something to keep learners learning. They take different forms right now.
Right, and the software tool was Rachel. Is that what you?
Yes, I'll post a note here in the chat. It's an acronym, which of course it's Remote Access for something, 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 and I can't remember it right now, but I'll post a link in the chat. It's a very inexpensive tool, and it actually was formed by a worldwide organization, nonprofit, to reach remote areas like in Papua New Guinea and in the wilds of Africa. So they're very well versed in how to use some of the open source equipment to do that. And this is one of them. So I'll post it here in just a second. I can't type and talk at the same time. So if there aren't any other questions, be happy to answer them. Okay, well, I will turn it back over to you then, Neil, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
All right, thanks, Penny.
You're welcome.
And a lot of additional comments, not related to distance learning, but just general comments around WIOA and other things in the chat. So a real vibrant discussion going on in the chat. And so, Veronica, have we been able to locate Jay Wright? Is he ready to come on?
Yes, Jay is in the room. Jay, are you there?
Okay, am I officially unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay, just making
Right.
sure everybody can hear. Okay, I'm gonna try to boil down, probably an hour and a half of information into 5 minutes here, but mostly I will just make a pitch for some of the trainings we've been doing. You saw Penny go over that OTAN COVID-19 website, lots of resources there, including some from us. We've also been doing some joint webinars here over the last couple weeks. There's an overview that I did a couple Thursdays ago and then did again on Tuesday. There was a more TE-centric one that we did yesterday. Penny's doing one on Tuesday on resources, and then I'll be doing my overview again on Thursday, covering a lot of these issues, mostly related to distance learning. I saw a lot of it in the questions as well. The reason why I'm on the agenda is a more CAEP specific one that we'll be doing on Wednesday, April 15th. I'll let Veronica confirm that that is an okay date for everybody, but that was the date we discussed. So Neil and I will do one on Wednesday afternoon, the 15th. It'll be similar to the ones I've been doing with OTAN on distance learning and so on, but provide a more specific CAEP point of view, with the idea that mostly it will be to confirm that for the most part, rules with CAEP on class creation and hours determination and things like that are the same for CAEP as they are for WIOA, but there are some things maybe with alternative outcomes where it's a little bit different, where we'll try to get into that a little bit to try to provide some differences. So we'll do that on that Wednesday afternoon. We'll also use that as kind of a kickoff to frame the 6 regional network meetings that Neil mentioned a little bit earlier. To summarize the questions, I'm looking here to see if there's, I see general comments, but no specific questions right now. But just looking at the general questions, I'll summarize the training a little bit because there were a lot of questions about those things in the training. I'll say class creation number 1, hours number 2, assessment number 3, deliverables number 4. Those are the 4 big areas of the training, and I've seen a little bit on all 4 areas in the chat this hour. For class creation, we're basically looking at 2 models, one called Pick Up Where You Left Off, one called Start New Classes, where it's really up to you how to deal with the classes for distance learning. You can keep them all exactly the same, or you can go ahead and start new with the new classes that you're doing now after COVID-19. It really is your choice. There's a few ups and downs to each one based on how your program's structured. With hours, there's 3 federal models that you can use to do distance learning. The one that we've used historically in California, that's the one we're talking about the most, is called Learner Mastery. Whereas if you're using things like educational software or videos, or you're looking at things like Zoom recordings, you can basically just determine amount of time, ahead of time and apply that number of hours equally to all students, and basically document it that way so it's consistent for everybody. There are ways where you can use clock time if it's just the teacher talking on Zoom instead of the regular classroom. But again, if you want a lot of those details, better probably for the training. As far as assessment goes, the thing I wanted to reference is last Friday, OCTAE, that is the federal government, did come up with a big, memorandum. It was memo 20-3 that was basically the memo that we had all kind of been waiting on to clarify some of those things related to COVID-19. It certainly didn't clarify everything, but it did start to weigh in on what new requirements, if any, there are with distance learning. How does that affect some of the things that had been going on federally? It talks a little bit about assessment and a little bit about distance learning hours as well. What I'll say about that, I think best is to refer you to our CASAS website. On our CASAS homepage, there's a link right there to the right that provides you the link to where you can view that OCTAE memo in its entirety. There's also, a paragraph or two statement that we put together at CASAS, basically responding to that memo. The long story short, to the specific question I saw earlier, was for now, yes, CASAS pre and post testing still requires an in-person proctor. So I wouldn't say it's not allowed, but that basically, for all intent and purposes, means it's not allowed for now. We are definitely looking at the idea of remote proctoring. There's a lot of different things we need to look at and a lot of security issues we really need to be able to verify and work through before it's a reality. But I'll just say we have started to do some internal field tests, kind of some what ifs, and kind of work out some of the kinks on how that would work. But again, for now, until we can really get that working the right way and really kind of work out with California and all the other states that use us exactly what the game plan is for each individual state, it's not allowed until we have a game plan for California. For other states, it'll be the same thing. Again, long story short, is that memo left it mostly to states, where some states will just say, we're not going to test for the rest of the year. Others might try to do some workarounds. It's a state decision right now. So we're working on a lot of different things right now for California. The final thing I'll bring up is deliverables, because it did come up, as a question a couple times. This is maybe a question for CDE if you want the exact answer, but my understanding is all deliverables for right now are the exact same deliverables, same requirements, same due date, same everything, with the idea that there isn't really any specific date to change it to. So for now, everything's the same. To that end, I'll just add from a WIOA point of view that IET plan was posted on our website yesterday. That WIOA 2 program survey was also posted on our website yesterday. Those are 2 April 30th deliverables that were available recently. I'll just say there's a lot more that we could talk about here, but I'll just reference those trainings. Again, one with OTAN next Thursday, and then one with TAP and Neil on Wednesday the 15th. Again, lots more we could talk about, but I'll present that as the overview for right now.
Jay, there was a quick question from Beth. Will there be any adjustments to the WIOA employment and earnings survey due to the large number of exiting students at this time? I don't know if you have any update on that.
I'm sorry, could you say that last bit again?
Okay. Will there be any adjustments to the WIOA?
I see it now. Okay, I'm reading it now. I'm sorry.
Okay.
As far as I know, that's the same due dates. I mean, I would encourage you to talk to your CDE consultant if there's some special conditions you have. But from my understanding, without being the decider at all, my understanding is all deliverable due dates for 1920 are staying the same. I have been copied on some correspondence, so I know they're getting the sort of correspondence you're referencing. So you can certainly talk to them. But the default answer is all dates are the same. The expenditures, sorry, that one I'm going to refer you to your CDE person. And I think Sharon, your answer is that answer too is the same, that if you have concerns about any specific deliverable, I would definitely encourage you to talk to your CDE person.
Jay, what about this? Is this a Penny question or your question? Rosetta Stone for ESL, can we use that for hours?
Okay, I guess I could kind of be either. I mean, Penny would know the materials a lot better, but I'll just say, you know, yes, you can. You know, I would just be sure to note those modules, you know, note how students are doing it and make sure that you figure out, you know, hours for students, you know, related to the different modules. You know, that would be an example of the sort of things we go over in training, where you give a certain amount of time, you give a certain amount of time for each module, figure out how long it takes an average student to do it, and then just define on your agency and how much time that would be, so you can apply the same equally for each student.
And then Jay, Rocky wanted to make a suggestion. He said, if the College Board is allowing high school students to take AP tests at home, timed at 45 minutes as open book, why can't CASAS testing follow suit? So I'm sure
Well,
you're
there's
looking
a lot
at,
of reasons there. I guess the short answer is we're standardized, so we have to work out a lot of security issues based on how we are standardized. So I've got to say that suggestion would be a complete non-possibility. You know, there are some things we're looking at, but we've got to make sure it's standardized, so when students take tests, they're all taking it the same way under the same conditions. I got to say with that, there would be a 0% chance that it could be standardized, so I don't see that. I'm not the decider on that either, but I don't think that would work for CASAS, because there's no way that could be done standardized. That's not to say that there aren't ways, and we're kind of working through it now, but it would probably need to be a little bit more involved than this suggestion.
thanks, Jay. And then, I don't know if you saw that last suggestion from the foundation. There is some online proctoring that they might be using in the community college. I'll let you take a look at that, but you don't need to comment, just a suggestion from them. So
Okay, yeah, we've had lots of suggestions for different materials. You know, we have looked at some of them. If you want to send me some stuff, sure, you know, I can pass it along.
So any other questions for Jay, or you just want to wait for the 15th to save up all your questions? I know some of the questions that we're getting related to WIOA funds are really a CDE type question, or advocating for extensions and things like that are really, you know, should be geared towards Carolyn Zachary, those kind of things. But any program specific questions related to input into TOPS Pro, we have a couple of minutes with Jay, or distance learning questions that you had, we can answer those now. We'll give you a couple of minutes, and then we'll bring in the CalFresh people.
Okay, there were a couple of these look like more funding questions that I can't really answer. You know, there is one about coding classes. So I'll say that one is, it depends. That's that first topic I brought up, is what the trainings are covering, where you can pick up where you left off. So what I mean by that is you basically are saying you're keeping the classes the same, the teachers the same, the students are the same, the days of the week are the same, and so on. You just had a little, you know, a week off because of COVID-19, and now you're doing it on Zoom instead of in the classroom or something like that. If that's the case, you don't need to really make any changes in TE, but you do need to kind of figure out that 50% rule, whether that means that ultimately more than 50% or less than 50% of that class ended up being distance learning. Your other option is, if you want to create all new classes, you're free to do so. Some would say, hey, things have changed too much now, everything's different, students, teachers, classroom times are all different, so we're going to start all over again. If you do that, then you would need to create the new classes in TE. The new ones you created would be, you know, coded as distance learning. So that means more time in TE, but some like that better, because you don't need to spend as much time on the 50% rule. As far as I know, you might want to look at that Octave memo. I haven't heard that question about POPs a lot in California, but it does seem like that's a more common question from the nationwide audience. So you might want to look at that Octave memo. As far as I know for now, there's no impact on POPs, that everything kind of just stays the same. If they're sticking around for distance learning, well, then they'll be hanging in there. If they disappear, that would mean they just are starting a new POP whenever they come back, like before. there are some things in that memo. They don't really tell you it's definitely one way or definitely the other way, but I will say there's some things in that memo where they're addressing questions from other states to say that, yeah, they're kind of looking into, how long this goes, and there might be more to follow on that from the feds. Yeah, there's no reason why you can't register new students. Obviously it might be a little bit more difficult. I've heard that some still are. I mean, the big thing that comes up with CASAS, of course, is that appraisals like pre and post also require an in-person proctor. So that's a little bit of a detriment. We have a little bit of a different answer for that, though, in that you can still use things like interviews and writing samples for that. That is, you can at least do something instead of nothing. So, yes, there's nothing preventing you from taking on new students at all.
So Jay, I don't want to be a troublemaker, but what would prevent a school from enrolling a student from another part of the region? So let's say that adult school district either doesn't offer that online capacity, or maybe not that class, or they don't like that class. So they heard about another adult school that has a really good distance learning program and they enroll. I mean, are we even looking at that? Is that something we're concerned about or not really?
I don't know if there's a great way to track it. Obviously that would be fine if the student did that. I guess the goofy answer to that is everybody has different IDs, so it's always kind of hard to track that. I'll give a couple different answers that address your question kind of sideways. One is there is a feature that has absolutely nothing to do with COVID-19. It was more of a request from the field related to migrant workers, where there's a feature that we haven't fully implemented, but we've started piloting, called the data transfer wizard, which basically allows you to create export files. So if you know that, hey, they're in Coachella for the winter, and in Fresno for Coachella for the winter and Fresno for the summer, or something like that, then Coachella and Fresno could trade data, and the wizard basically uses things like first and last name, date of birth, and so on to kind of fuzzy match the students that, in my example, Coachella sent to Fresno, with the idea that it knows that it has a handful of students going. So potentially you could use that for this purpose. I'll just add that it is a new feature and it wasn't really intended for this. But if you're really interested in trying to track that in any region, let me know. Maybe you might be a good pilot candidate for this new feature. I'm not sure. The other thing I'll just say that's not your exact question, but just more at the federal level, in that federal memo, they do go way out of their way to direct all states to come up with a way to account for the number of students affected by COVID-19. So there is a new feature we'll be adding in TE. Not quite sure if it'll be a student level feature or just an agency level feature. A few details like that we need to decide. But overall, there will definitely be some feature here soon where all agencies will basically be tracking, the number of students that were affected. Obviously, that means just about everybody, but there is something now that the feds are directing all states to show that issue.
Right, and I would just add, from the policy standpoint, if you do know of a student that's coming from another district, I would check with that district and also check with CDE. I know the colleges have to have agreements if students are crossing over, so I'm assuming the same would apply in the K-12 world. So it's always good to double check, but I haven't seen anything on that, so we'll leave it at that. And then Rocky added, students are free to enroll at any location during 88 times you needed agreements in place. That is no longer an issue since ADA is not used to fine. Yeah, we don't track by seat time anymore, but I would just double check, make sure. So I don't have a policy response to that, but we'll follow up. Okay, thank you, Jay, and we'll post that information for the webinar coming up. All that information for OTAN and COSTAS will be on our website, and we'll put it in the newsletter. And Veronica, do we have our next guests available?
I have been checking and I do not see Christina or Alexis on the line. So if you are, if
Hey.
you're signed in. Okay, great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I
Yes.
can.
Oh, wonderful. Hey, Neil, it's Christina Mesa. How are you?
I'm doing good. We couldn't find you among the 167 people. So
It's okay. I realized I signed in as K Mesa, so that's probably why. Sorry, Veronica, for the confusion. But thank you guys so much for having us. I'm filling in for our branch chief, Alexis Fernandez, today. I am the acting bureau chief for policy and employment in the Cal Fresh and Nutrition branch at the California Department of Social Services. So thank you guys so much for having us. There's a lot that's been happening in the food world in terms of food distribution, which kind of lives in one house amongst our branch. So the way that our branch is split up is we have one side that manages the Cal Fresh, which is the food stamp program for the state of California. And then the other side of the house kind of manages our nutrition education programs as well as our food distribution and food bank programs. So I'll give updates on both fronts because, as you can imagine, a lot has been happening around the state in terms of trying to both administer food benefits for folks that are new applicants. So I think the biggest thing that we are trying to respond to as a state in terms of policy is around an significant increase in CalFresh applications, folks applying for food stamps. And just to share some perspective and numbers for you all, last week alone, we saw 88,000 applications for CalFresh. And the same week a year ago, we saw about 39,000, and that's fairly average. So increases are just, it's record-breaking numbers for us as a state in terms of administering these food stamp programs or food benefits for the number of folks who are applying. So a lot of our policy efforts have been focused on kind of alleviating some of the office and administrative burdens or barriers that clients face and trying to get those benefits expedited and in their pockets as soon as possible. And it's even more challenging under current circumstances when we have some office closures. We have about 252 CalFresh offices across the state of California. And amongst those, I believe our numbers are at about 150 partial office closures, meaning they're not able to take in clients directly. However, all clients should be able to apply for benefits online or via phone. And so we've done a lot on that front to ensure that we have the capacity to meet the need using these alternative methods, and then also getting creative in our application assisters and our outreach tools to ensure that other folks on the ground can help assist in the application process in those events where perhaps the county welfare department is experiencing a partial closure. So that's one piece of it, and we've done a lot to work with our federal partners to ensure that these expedited policy procedures can be implemented. I know that some of you, or if not most of you, are aware of the Family First Coronavirus Response Act that was passed a couple of weeks ago. Had 3 different provisions to expand existing benefits for our clients. So I'll share a little bit about what that means for us in California. The 3 provisions that impact our program, the first is what they call emergency allotments, which for the months of March and April would bring every household who is receiving a CalFresh or food benefit up to the maximum allotment that would be available to them. So for instance, a single adult who applies for CalFresh benefits it can access up to $194 in benefits, but perhaps there's income that applicant receives that may bring them down to $100 or less. And so what this emergency allotment does is it would allow that individual to get that full maximum benefit of $194. And that's across the board. Doesn't matter what your household size is. So if your household allows you to have up to $400 in benefits, then you will receive that maximum benefit. So those emergency allotments will be in place, like I said, for the months of March and April. We are advocating with our federal partners to extend that because I think we're all with the same understanding, especially us here in California and folks on the East Coast, that we believe we would need these emergency allotments as well as other added benefits for our clients much longer than just 2 months. But in addition to the emergency allotments, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act also implemented a new program called Pandemic EBT, or what we refer to in California as PEBT. So we're working closely with folks over at the California Department of Education to basically offer an EBT card and added food benefits to all students who are eligible for a free and reduced price lunch. So this also includes students who are at community eligible schools or CES schools. So all students that are part of those programs and meal programs would have access to and receive the PEBT card. And that basically is a benefit for students who are impacted by school closures for 5 or more days and no longer can have those free or reduced price lunch meals on campus or at school. I know that some schools are offering pickup of lunches or lunch options and breakfast options. That is a completely different program. So if that's made available, it does not impact their eligibility for this PEBT program. We're still exploring the administration of it and trying to figure out the logistics directly with CDE and some of our other partners, such as the folks that issue out those EBT cards. So that will probably be rolling out in the month of April. So excited to share more once we learn more. But that would basically put food benefits in, allow food benefits for about 4 million different students across the state of California. And this is in addition to regular food benefits. So really excited to implement that and working hard to get those logistics figured out with CDE and some of our other partners. The third provision as part of the Family First Coronavirus Response Act was the suspension, a full suspension of the ABOD time limit. So for those of you that participated in some of those conversations a couple of months ago and have been in tune with some of the news that was stemming out of our federal oversight agency around changing rules or modifying rules that would basically hold adults who do not have dependents but are accessing food benefits to a time limit if they were not working or participating in a work program. So they would only receive 3 months of food benefits before being cut off if they were not able to obtain employment or participate in a work activity or a work program. The suspension of that rule I think is crucial because it basically saves about 400,000 individuals in California, and now I'm sure more as we are starting to see an influx in applications from potentially losing their food benefits. So really excited to see that that one came through as part of this package, and excited for our participants who now don't have to face potentially losing those valuable food benefits in a time where it's needed more than ever. So on a policy front, those are the 3 major things. I know we're still trying to work out the details of the CARES Act that was passed last week, that expanded UI benefits to the 3 different categories of pandemic unemployment benefits. And it's our goal to hopefully not have that income used in determining eligibility for CalFresh. So we'll keep everybody posted on what the result is and the policy discussions and legal discussions that are happening with that piece. But we're really hoping that guidance is in alignment with what we're thinking it should be for those UI benefits. And then quickly, because I know I only have a couple of minutes, I want to talk about food distribution. So first, the state-funded food boxes. Governor Newsom appropriated about $20 million to our department in 2 phases for the purchase and distribution of food boxes to 50 different food banks and food bank partners across the state of California. And that was done in collaboration and partnership with the California Association of Food Banks. This would basically provide nearly a week's worth of groceries to more than 900,000 families across the state, while providing a significant boost to the supply of food available to food banks that are just to help meet that growing need of just food, right, for a lot of our different participants. So excited to share more on that. If you are curious to learn food banks or locations of food banks, you could go directly to their website, cafoodbanks.org, and I'll link it into the chat box to find a food bank local to you, your community, and for the participants you serve. And then we also have a federally funded food, emergency food program. So Congress appropriated $400 million nationwide via the Relief Act to Augment State Emergency Food Assistance Program, which we call our TFAP program. And of that, California's 48 different TFAP providers will receive about $12 million in additional administrative support, support funding, and an additional $36 million in food support by the month of July. In addition to that, Congress also appropriated $600 million nationwide via the CARES Act to augment more TFAP allocations. We're still waiting to hear what that means for California. And I'm sure you guys have heard much about the food bank volunteer support that we've received. So a lot of efforts on that front from our friends at Cal OES, National Guard, Cal Volunteers, all helping supporting the staffing deficiencies that food banks are facing and volunteer deficiencies that food banks are facing as a result of the pandemic. So with that, I'm going to stop there before I think we have 1 minute left.
So Christina, just a few questions. What were the 3 efforts again that you referred to? Or
Yeah,
3?
So the 3 different provisions that stem from the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. The first one being the emergency allotments, which would bring every household in California for at least March and April up to the maximum benefit that they could receive.
And what's that amount? And what's that amount that they could receive? The maximum.
For a single adult, I know it's $194, and the rest is just dependent on family size.
Okay. Sorry
And
for
then
that
we have
interruption.
Oh, no, it's okay. Want to make sure it's clear too for the group. And then we also have PEBT or pandemic EBT, which is expanding EBT benefits and EBT cards to all of those students, K-12 students who are part of the free and reduced price meal program or lunch program. So they would get about $100 actually in EBT benefits that would be issued out in a special EBT card for all of those students. And then the third one is a suspension of the ABOD rule.
Okay. You know, it would be helpful because we did have a lot of links being put in the chat. When you guys get a chance, if you could send over just maybe some links and resources, and then we could post that on our website, put it in our newsletter as a follow-up to today's conversation, that would be so helpful.
Definitely will do.
Okay, great. So any questions for Christina? I know it's a lot of material and we only gave her a short amount of time, but a lot of our students will need these resources. So we will follow up and get these resources out to you so you can connect locally with your county social services if you haven't already. And we look forward to having more information from Department of Social Services in the future as we work together to help our students and their families. Anything else to add, Christina, before we sign off?
No, just thank you guys so much for all your work. Really appreciate it and excited to continue working together.
All right, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, Veronica, do you want to wrap up? And I'd like to thank everyone that participated today, everyone that was in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing. And Veronica, any closing instructions or comments?
Yes, thank you, Neil, and thank you to all of our presenters who were on this afternoon, as well as our participants. We appreciate you all in engaging with us during this time. As I put in the chat, I mentioned that we will send an email, a follow-up email like we did last week, with all of the details that were discussed this afternoon, including links to all resources. So you'll have everything in one specific email that you can send on to your students and colleagues. We will also include the recording for today's meeting as well. We didn't ask the polling question, but I think, Neil, you discussed that we will continue on until we these meetings are no longer needed. So we'll send that information out. We will also announce the regional network meetings that will be upcoming, and we will send separate invitations for each of the regions so that everyone will have a unique Zoom link for their specific region. So definitely be on the lookout for all of those details. We will outpour a lot of resources and details for you all during this time. But thank you all very much for your time this afternoon. Continue to be safe and healthy, and we will reconvene next week. Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.